Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Parkinson, and I'm a senior consultation specialist with Atkins Realis. Today, we are continuing our series of live stream topics on the Northern Road Link project as it moves through the provincial environmental assessment and federal impact assessment processes. The topics we are covering parallel our project activities, so we hope these will help our viewers and listeners better understand the project and provide input along the way. And my usual co host is not here, but with me is a special guest star by the name of Mr. Chris McKay. And Chris is a fine member of Batagabi First Nation with decades of experience working with and for Indigenous communities in many capacities. Good afternoon, Chris.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm looking forward to this special get to quality community perspectives and help folks understand how communities view this project.
That is so true, Chris. And today we're going to talk about these community perspectives using clips like we did last week from an interview done that we did 2 weeks ago with a member of Martin Falls First Nation, Mr. Darren Spence. And the purpose of these discussions is to share community views and hear community voices on various topics relevant to the NRL environmental and impact assessment. So, without further ado, let's dive in. We had a great conversation with Darren a couple of weeks ago, as I said, covering a whole range of topics, talked for a while. And Darren has really interesting perspective on the future. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each clip, and then Chris and I will discuss each one and then move on to the next clip. And a series of community perspectives. If we do have any interested community members who'd like to participate, feel free to put your names forward. You'll see contact information on the screen shortly. And so let's get started, Chris. And we'll start with the first clip, which is about socioeconomic realities of remote communities and First Nations in general. So if we can go ahead and play that clip, and then we'll have our discussion.
So to help control that narrative, help control the how our assets are going to be managed, is going to be vital for this all season roads, as well as not just commodities like gold and lithium and whatnot, but also emergency services, hospitality services, like government services, like public services, like roads and highways and bridges, right? Teach our people how to be efficient and to build skills that are going to be able to sustain themselves and give them hope.
So, Chris, this is
I like that.
yeah. There's a lot there, and this ties
There
into
is.
some of the stuff we've discussed before. And I guess I always talk about how the road isn't the single solution to a community's issues, is it? And there's way more to it than that, right?
Yeah, certainly. When it comes to, a few comments that he made there, certainly like the one around hope, right? So what is that? What's hope? Is a road hope? Yeah, I think for a lot of people it is. And what I think, the community has done, and you can tell that Darren is looking at this, not just from the road, but all the other assets, that he had mentioned around infrastructure and, hospitality, emergency services and stuff like that, if there's an influx of people that are, traveling to your community, you have to be able to sustain that and support that. And I think that was a really great comment. And I think Don, you can add to the comments around people, they have hope, but they also have worries, and that's something that I thought was really crucial to hear from the communities that hope is great, but where there's worry, sometimes that the community is looking at it from a holistic point of view.
Yeah, and Chris, like just by having a road that is ultimately connected, and the Webquay Supply Road, ultimately, if the other two all-season roads move ahead, will be connected to the provincial highway network, and that would, you know, regardless of how much security there is and how many access restrictions there might be on the road, there's still going to be an influx of people coming to the community, isn't there?
That's right. That's right. Even currently, we see that now. Currently, with the amount of people that are coming into Webequay, there's I don't want to say lack of services. The community has services for itself, but now is it costing the community more money? In maintaining the infrastructure and so on, and how does that work? But one of the things that I caught, in Darren's comment was, when you mentioned our assets, and you mentioned gold and lithium being an asset, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought that point of view right off the bat was great. So, and so other assets may be, fish and wildlife as well, right? And so
Yeah.
looking at it from that point of view, there's a lot to manage, a lot to prepare for.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. And that term assets, right? I mean, that came up last week in the first interview with Darren. The way, remember, he was talking about doing an inventory of the community's assets, right? And identifying them. And because again, it's more than just the minerals in the ground. It's the natural beauty of the area. That's an asset too for other reasons, for tourism, for guided tours, for example, things like that. But you touched on something there where, like in Webequay right now, when there is an influx of people, as there is, from time to time, whether it's teams coming up to do field work for projects like ours, or if there's a powwow, right, in the community, there's limited
Yeah.
places to stay, right? Like there's just the infrastructure is like, I know their generators at capacity right now, and so they can't do anything more in terms of adding more housing units until that gets addressed.
We'll have rolling blackouts.
That's right. Yeah, there's the solution. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Everybody makes a sacrifice. That's right. No, I think yeah, and it takes me back to my days when I used to work for a planning firm. We did master planning of well, they're usually larger cities, but we did like resort master planning, things like that. And this is the kind of thing, this is master planning we're talking about here, right? Where you're looking at scenarios and you're saying, planning scenarios where you're saying, okay, if a road is built, how many, what kind of increase in community population, even if it's, not permanent, but for, different times a year or whatever, might there be, and what stress would that put on our infrastructure? How many more beds do we need at the nursing station? How many more rooms do we need at the hotel? Things like that. It all has to be tied together to the road itself.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely. Emergency response planning is going to be,
Huge.
I think, a big part of their future, right? And I think opportunities that come with that, right?
Yep.
So certainly, disaster planning and stuff like that is something like, not a lot of communities have gone through those exercises, right? And so I think,
Yep.
I've seen in my experience, communities are doing that more and more often, right? And you see evacuations from fire and stuff like that, and so when you have these situations like that, and your infrastructure is not prepared to handle it, there could be some tragedy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can't just look at the road, in isolation. You have to look at the bigger picture in terms of with the road, influx of people, stress on the system. There needs to be accommodations of some kind, for other infrastructure to be able to absorb that influx of people. So it requires,
Yeah, they have to go
again,
hand in hand. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it requires comprehensive land use planning, right? Like, I mean, um, and at a more detailed level, right? At that level of, okay, how many more beds, right? How many more hotel rooms? How many more, facilities for equipment storage, or a healing
Water
center,
treatment plants.
water treatment?
Water
Exactly. Oh,
treatment
there's a
plants
perfect
keep up.
example.
Yeah, that's
Water treatment
right.
plants, landfills. What do we do?
We got
All
no
this
water
sort of,
pressure there, John. What are we gonna do? Right?
yeah,
There's no water pressure.
exactly.
My hair is so flat. Right? I won't be
Yes,
able to.
that's right. That's right. And you and I have spent a couple of days, living in Webequie, and there's challenges, right? Like keeping everything,
Yeah.
keeping on top of everything, and people are stretched. They're doing many different jobs. It's not easy, right? Because there's only a certain amount of money
No.
to go around to pay for people that live in the community and that are doing work to support the band. So, okay, let's move on to our next clip, and it talks more about community planning. But let's listen to Darren, and then we'll come back and chat about this.
I think that's one of the hugest, biggest opportunities that this all season road provides is that there is there is light on the horizon that for a young family who don't have very many opportunities within a community because the lack of resources are there, that they would be able to have these resource centers to assist them to help them become a healthy family. I had to leave the province of Ontario to support my family, right? I had to, I and the opportunities there were huge, right? I went to an oil-rich, gas-rich province in Alberta, and I went to a very remote community. And from what I saw there from season to season, we're going to be a lot like what we're going to see in the all season road, with the influx of people coming when there's high times for forestry, for if lithium is high in the market, if gold is high in the market, if biofuels, what have you. If those things will fluctuate throughout the market, and those types of industry attract different types of people from all over the world.
Wow, interesting. Again, that word hope came up again,
Mhm.
Chris.
It sure did. Yeah, and that's. I mean, certainly trying to think about past experience myself can that I can relate to Darren. And as often communities, when you grow up on a First Nation, you can relate, right? And
Yep.
so I was born in '78, and the Highway 144 wasn't built yet, and it was built in '78. Like they were in the process of building that, and I recall people explaining to me when those days were coming, people were excited to have, instead of a dirt road, it takes you 2-3 hours to get to Timmins. You can get there in 1 hour now. Right. And so I remember people getting excited about, better opportunities for work, for food and all those things. We can go to Timmins in a day trip and come back and it's not, it's not a serious journey. So roads that aren't plowed, right? This is like a real bush road. And so people's lives changed, right? And so coming from that experience, I mean, I was a newborn, but at the same time, someone's hurt, someone's sick, you got to get them out of the community. You can get to the hospital in 1 hour versus 3, right? So that's it's something that and when you talk about people from all over the world coming to your community, And that was another experience that my community went through was, people coming from Timmins to the community, because one, we got our kids are going to high school now. They're making new friends, making, new acquaintances, and then bringing them to the community to show them their lifestyle. So we had an influx of a lot of non-Indigenous people, which, really shaped the way our community is today. So
Interesting. Yeah.
little
Wow, that's a
share.
great story, Chris. Yeah. Um, that's a perfect example right there. How transformative uh, that could be, right? I mean, like you said, offering lots of opportunities, but then there's the other side of it, right? Then it's creating these, it's changing the cultural mix in a community and the dynamics in a community, and but there's that word hope there, Chris. And that word hope is such a big thing. And I know, having been in communities talking about all season roads, and particularly with young people, and middle-aged people as well too, but that hope of, of it's like that light at the end of the road, right? The end of the tunnel. Um, that possibility for something better, right? And I think that, and I know in Webequay, as I was telling you before, we just arranged a demonstration by our field team for high school students at the local school, and uh, there's definitely interest, right? And because the questions were prepared in advance. The teacher got a lot of questions from the kids, and you could when I heard the questions yesterday, when our field team coordinator was telling me the questions, had hope in them. That, oh, so there might
Hmm.
be jobs and good jobs, and you mean I could stay in my community and still be able to make good money, and you know what I mean, like that. That
Yeah,
kind
it's
of,
certainly, looking at it from, you want to do like an age kind of scan of youth to elders, and having that hope for new opportunity and stuff like that. I think maybe, in today's day that some of the aspirations of the members have changed, right? They
yep,
aspire to want to do those cool jobs, and when they see things like that happen, like when you bring in, a drill rig and kind of show people how it works, and get people interested in that type of business or that type of future employment, if you will, that it makes you think, and so focusing on the youth is really important. And as you get older, and you have skill sets and whatnot, you look at what you can do with the time you have, right? So, how long is this
yeah,
road going to take? It's always right, and maybe some people see it as, am I really going to benefit from this road? Well, maybe not in a sense, but sure, your children will, right? And those are the
yeah.
those are the ones that I think, you can tell that they have that hope and that aspiration to want to do more, so.
Yeah, and that leads me to our next clip, um, and which will tie in with a discussion you and I had before the show. And this next clip talks about the mixed reactions to all season roads. People looking at both sides of pros and cons of all season roads. So let's listen to that clip from our chat with Darren, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
There's going to be timelines because we got to be reasonable as well. We can't expect that we're going to get from like list 1 to 18 right
Yeah,
away.
no,
Yeah, right.
honestly, yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
We got to be we got to be realistic. But I think that within that, if we have, say, within 5 years, like I was saying, I want my housing crisis to be done, and without that, well, there's going to be penalties. Now you owe our community X amount of dollars, or you will like something like that, right? It's there's got to be the that those negotiations and those terms got to be got to be fair, right? And when, like I was saying, we got to be good neighbors, and there are sacrifices that our communities are going to have to undergo in order to have these all season roads come in, because we also know what it's about. It's about economic development. It's about capturing the resources and using those resources to assist our country in Canada to for the global market, right? And then like we have the states and we have the European Union really engaging with Canada and how we're going to work together and what it is that how is that going to look for how is that going to look going forward.
Wow, great,
Hmm.
great clip there. A lot there. Let me just tell you, you and I, Chris, talked before the show, and in that you mentioned something which I thought was important, and it was the fact you said you felt good about the fact that community members aren't just all in support of these roads, because they yeah, they're supportive of it, but it's important for them to recognize that not everything is going to be positive, and that you have to plan for the things the the things that make it not perfect, right? And if you can plan for those things and maybe control the negatives, then you can do even better, as a result of projects like this.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have everyone on one side of the fence. That doesn't really work. You go to any place, there's never 100%. There's not the word consensus, right? It's certainly
Yep.
thrown around out there, but it serves a really good purpose, because people sit there and they wonder. And they wonder, what's going to happen, in 10 years. They wonder, is there going to be drug problems? There's a negative one. Oh, is there going to be lots of good jobs? Oh, there's a good one, right? But where there's wonder, there's worry. And that's something that,
Hmm.
I think is all part of this planning process that makes it holistic. And if you don't look at both sides of the fence and try to find that medium ground, then, I don't think that we've really done our job well.
Yeah, and if you're trying to do what's best for your community, right, it's good. You need to look at the positives and the negatives. Because if you look at the negatives, like we talked about before, about this influx of people into the community, that will remind you that, wait, hold on, it can't be just the road. There has to be other things tied to the road to make the project a real success, right? That additional community infrastructure to absorb any changes. The other thing that I thought was kind of neat was Darren's sort of perspective on, you know, things are going to change, right? Change is inevitable. There are sacrifices that have to be undergone as part of this for economic development purposes. I thought that was a note, really. That's entering into it with your both eyes open kind of approach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, I just
that's
thought,
you could tell that he certainly is looking at the size of it that are really important, and he's mentioned many times around the infrastructure, the housing, and that's something that I think obviously has to be addressed, and at least have some sort of plan on how we're gonna grow and not have people out in the cold, not have overcrowded homes and potential fire hazards and stuff like that, right? So he's definitely got an idea of both sides. I mean, he understands global markets, right? Like he understands what's
yeah,
happening in the world and how that's impacting his community, right? So I think that Darren's done a great job of looking at both sides of the fence there.
yeah, yeah. Well, let's move to our final quote here, or clip here, Chris, and yeah, we'll just go ahead and play it, then we'll talk.
Yeah, I think there's people on both sides of the fences, right? Like, I've heard from both sides, right? And some people are totally against it, and some people are totally for it, right? And some people, the whole mining and industry, like, like there's some communities are for, it, and some communities are definitely, completely against it, right? There's, there's 0 100 basically. There's no There's very like a little small amount of people who are 50%, right? If we can kind of draw it that way.
So
I kind of felt I left ahead there a bit, Don, talking about both sides of the fence. And
yeah, but
uh,
it's interesting though, like, you know, yeah, I mean, there are those people, and we've met them before in Chris in the community who absolutely don't want anything to change, right? Um, they want the way of
mhm,
life to stay
mhm.
the same, and 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 we respect that. And but the challenge is, and this is why we do the work that we do, I think, doing these environmental assessments, these impact assessments. These are deep dives with a lot of, years and years of studies undertaken. And the point of them is to try to find, obviously to identify potential effects of the project, but the point is also to try to find and identify ways to mitigate, like to control or limit the negatives of something, right? And that's where the challenge lies. Instead of just saying, well, no, there's no way, we don't want anything to change. You look at it and you say, okay, well, how can we make this the best possible project that has the least possible impact on people and their way of life? How can we try to preserve things as much as possible? So, I mean, it's art and science combined, right? It's not binary, on or off. You're all
Art,
in or
science,
you're
and
you're
economics. Yeah.
in
Don't forget about the
economics.
economic
Yeah.
side of it, yeah, right? So
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
so certainly, yeah,
That's
yeah. It's hard to be all in. Like I said, the consensus side of things. That you've had that. I mean, I've seen ratifications for an impact benefit agreement that I think the highest I've seen, and I've been involved in a few, was like 94%. So 6%, that had objections, and it's very successful project at the end of the day. But the people did not want to see that happen. They're downstream, et cetera, et cetera. And but you gotta take that into consideration, right? That 6% still
yeah,
still belongs in the community, and if it's identifying, what could we do to be, you know most supportive to the 6%, right? And that's still,
yep.
that's still the goal, I think, of a lot of communities. And is it supporting cultural activities? Is it
Hmm.
supporting people going out on the land more, et cetera, et cetera, right? There's a whole, I think, list of things that we can identify that may help folks that want to keep it a traditional lifestyle, right? it'll
Yep.
it'll never be that way. Things change over time. I mean, and that's
Yeah.
just, I think, life. But um, uh, so the 6% is the people that you want to hear from.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Things do change. You have to accept change to a degree. Change can be managed so that it's not as impactful, for sure. And again, that's why we go through the process like we're going through now, is to try to understand things in detail, so that, if the project is approved, if the environmental assessment is approved, if the impact assessment is approved, it'll be approved with conditions, and those conditions and that monitoring will ensure that the project doesn't have, you know, lasting negative impacts. Let's put it that way. So, wow, that flew by, Chris.
Yeah, well, you know
That,
what? It did. But sorry, Don, I want to just make one more comment on that. Is that and that's, I think, what Darren was was really focused on, like the conditions, like 1 through 18. Like, here's all the things that we need to ensure success, right? And so I wanted to, just kind of leave off on that note that he definitely recognized those things that are really important. So. And
yeah,
I hope
he
to
did.
have other community members. I really hope to have other members go through this process, because it's very insightful.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I'd like to encourage other community members who would like to come on as guests to provide their perspectives. on the project to go to the website at supplyroad.ca and get in contact with us, and we will book an interview with you. We'll come up and find you and sit down with you, and then we can share what you have said with the communities in the region as well. So thanks, Chris, for joining us today, and that wraps up today's discussion. And our thanks again to Darren Spence for spending time with us for an interview. We hope this was helpful and encourages you to join us again. Don't forget to keep in touch with us, with our project team members, through the contact information available on our website, northernroadlink.ca, not supplyroad.ca, but northernroadlink.ca. Miigwech, and make sure to look out for project updates on social media and our website. Miigwech, and see you soon.